He woke up before the sun, as always. The house was quiet, just the hum of the old fridge and the soft breathing of his little boy still asleep in the other room. Coffee was a luxury he skipped these days. Milk and cereal had to stretch for another week. His back ached from the night shift, but there was no room to rest. Rent was due soon, the electric bill hung over his head, and school supplies were just another thing he had no idea how to afford. He packed a small lunch for his son, half a sandwich, a bruised apple, and some crackers. It wasn't much, but it was all he had. He gave the boy a smile, trying to hide the stress in his eyes. They had each other. That was something. Every day felt like a quiet fight. Against time. Against the bills. Against the fear of failing as a parent. He didn't complain. He couldn't. There was no one to listen. After dropping his son off at school, he walked to the bus stop. That's when he saw her, sitting on the curb near the grocery store. A woman with tired eyes, holding a cardboard sign that read, asterisk, "Please help. 3 kids. No food." Asterisk beside her, 3 small children sat huddled, looking at everyone who passed with wide, empty eyes. People walked by quickly, pretending not to see. Some looked, then looked away. But he couldn't move. Something in him froze. He knew that kind of pain. He knew the hunger in their eyes. And for a moment, he forgot his own problems. He stepped closer, unsure why, unsure how. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was something deeper. But that moment was about to change everything. He stood there for a moment, watching. The woman didn't beg. She didn't call out. She just sat silently, her arms wrapped around the smallest child, as if trying to shield them from the world. Her face was pale, her eyes tired, but there was something else too, shame. The kind of shame that comes from asking strangers for help when you never imagined you'd have to. The man looked down at his wallet. Just a few crumpled bills. Barely enough for dinner tonight. But something inside him wouldn't let him walk away. He knew what it felt like to be overlooked. To be struggling and invisible at the same time. He remembered the nights he skipped meals so his son could eat. The quiet panic of realizing there wasn't enough left to last the week. So he walked up slowly, unsure of what to say. The woman looked up, surprised. Not many people stopped. Her kids peeked out from behind her, curious but cautious. He knelt down beside them, holding out the small bag of snacks he had packed for his own lunch. Crackers. A juice box. A banana. "It's not much," he said quietly. "But maybe it'll help." The woman's eyes filled with tears. She didn't speak for a moment. Then she nodded, whispering a thank you, her voice barely holding together. One of the kids reached for the banana, and the man smiled, handing it over gently. He sat with them for a few minutes, not asking questions, not expecting anything in return. Just sharing the silence. Sharing the moment. Something about this family, this mother, felt familiar. Not in a way he could explain, but in a way he could feel. And as he sat there, he started to realize this wasn't just a random meeting. The kids ate quietly, sitting cross-legged on the sidewalk. No complaints, no mess, just quiet hunger being met for a brief moment. The man watched them, his thoughts spinning. He still wasn't sure why he'd stopped. He had problems of his own, and he wasn't some hero. But something about the way the mother clutched her children, the way she held herself together, even while breaking inside, it got to him. After a few minutes, he offered to buy them something warm from the small store nearby. The woman hesitated. "Are you sure?" she asked, her voice shaky, unsure whether to accept help or keep her pride intact. He nodded. "I don't have much," he said honestly. "But I know what it's like." They walked together slowly, the children trailing behind, their hands wrapped around the snacks he had given. Inside the store, he picked out a few basics: bread, peanut butter, a small carton of milk. Not a feast, but enough for the day. When they stepped outside again, the woman finally spoke more. She told him her name was Sarah. Her kids hadn't eaten since the night before. She'd been sleeping in her car with them for almost a week. Job lost. Rent unpaid. Shelter full. No one left to call. The man listened without interrupting. He didn't have answers, but he could listen. "I used to have a job," she said, almost defending herself. "A life. Then everything just fell apart." He nodded slowly. "Yeah, I get it." They sat back down near the curb. She looked at him closely for the first time, like she was seeing more than just a stranger. There was something in her eyes, recognition maybe. And that's when she said something that made his chest tighten. She looked at him and said softly, "You remind me of someone I used to know." He raised his eyebrows, curious. "Yeah? Who?" She hesitated, then gave a faint smile. "My brother." That caught him off guard. He hadn't expected that. "He passed away 3 years ago," she continued. "He was like you. Quiet. Kind. Always put others first, even when he had nothing left to give." Her voice cracked on the last word, and she quickly looked away, pretending to fix the blanket around her youngest child. The man didn't know what to say. Something about her words hit deeper than he expected. He thought of his own sister, who lived in another state. They hadn't spoken in a while. Life had gotten in the way. Too many things unsaid, too many days passed. The woman glanced at him again. "You just reminded me of him the moment you walked up. The way you looked at my kids. Like they mattered." He swallowed hard. That simple sentence stayed with him. Like they mattered. He looked at the kids, now playing quietly with a plastic spoon they'd found. Still too young to understand the weight their mother carried. Still innocent enough to smile. "I'm sorry you lost him," the man said. She nodded, wiping a tear from her cheek. "Me too. He used to say, even broken people can be a blessing." He sat still, letting those words settle. He wasn't sure if he felt broken, but he definitely didn't feel whole. Not for a long time. She smiled again, a little stronger this time. "Thank you for stopping. Most people don't." He looked down at his hands, suddenly aware of how empty they were, and how full his heart felt in that moment. He didn't realize how quiet the world around them had become. The usual noise of the city, cars, chatter, footsteps, faded into the background. It was just them now, sitting on the edge of the sidewalk, two strangers connected by something unspoken. Then she said it. The thing that truly shook him. "You know," she began, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear, "I almost didn't come out here today. I was embarrassed. Tired. I didn't want anyone to see me like this." He looked at her, listening. "But my middle child, he asked me this morning, 'Mom, will we eat today?' And I didn't know what to say. So I promised I'd try." She paused, then looked him straight in the eyes. "And now here you are." He felt something in his chest tighten. A lump rose in his throat. He thought about the times his own son had asked questions he couldn't answer. About food. About money. About why things were so hard. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a small, worn photo. This was us. Before. A picture of her family. Her smiling, holding her kids in front of a tiny apartment. Things looked different then. Brighter. "Everything changed so fast," she said. "One moment you're managing. The next, it's like the ground disappears beneath you." He stared at the photo, then back at her. Something about her story mirrored his own more than he expected. Maybe he hadn't lost a home, but he knew what it felt like to live one step from falling apart. She whispered, "I think you were meant to stop today." He didn't speak. He couldn't. Because deep down, something told him maybe she was right. Maybe there was a reason he chose that street, that hour, that exact moment. The walk back to the bus stop felt different this time. He wasn't in a rush. His usual thoughts, bills, hours at work, worry over dinner, had quieted. All he could think about was that woman and her kids. Their eyes. Her strength. The way she still smiled, even when everything had fallen apart. He glanced down at his phone. A message from his boss. Another shift opened up tonight. He started typing a reply, ready to accept it without thinking. Extra money meant a little less stress. But then he paused. He thought of his son, waiting at school. He thought of the promise he made to read with him tonight. His fingers hovered over the screen. Then slowly, he locked the phone and slid it into his pocket. He hadn't planned on spending his day like this. He hadn't planned on skipping lunch or giving away the little he had. But somehow, he didn't regret it. In fact, he felt lighter. As if, for the first time in a long while, something made sense. At the corner of the block, he turned around. The mother and her children were still sitting there, now with full bellies and a small grocery bag between them. One of the kids looked up and waved. He waved back, a small smile tugging at his face. He kept walking, but something inside him had shifted. The stress was still there. The struggle hadn't disappeared. But the weight felt different now. He had seen someone else carry just as much, maybe even more, and still offer a smile. Still offer hope. He didn't know her full story. And she didn't know his. But for a brief moment, their paths crossed. And in that space, something real happened. Something that didn't need words to matter. That night, he sat at the kitchen table with his son, a math worksheet spread out in front of him. His son was focused, pencil in hand, brows furrowed. Usually, the man was too tired to give more than half his attention. But tonight felt different. He leaned in closer, helped with each problem, even laughed when his son got one hilariously wrong and blamed a sleepy brain. After the homework was done, they ate dinner together, just soup and toast, but it felt warmer somehow. Not because of the food, but because of the silence between them. It wasn't heavy anymore. It was calm. Still. His mind kept drifting back to that family on the curb. He wondered if they were okay. If they had found somewhere safe to sleep. If someone else would stop and help, just like he had. He hoped so. But he also knew now that sometimes it only takes one person. One small act. He looked at his son, who was now curled up on the couch with a blanket, watching cartoons. There had been so many days where he felt like he wasn't doing enough. Like he was failing at this whole parenting thing. But something had changed in him today. That encounter had cracked something open. Not just empathy, but purpose. Later that week, he took a box of clothes his son had outgrown and donated them. He picked up an extra loaf of bread and peanut butter during his grocery run and left it at the community pantry down the block. No one saw him do it. That didn't matter. He didn't suddenly become a different man. He still had struggles. Still had bills. But now, he walked through each day carrying something he didn't have before, an awareness that even in his hardest moments, he could still give. The weather had turned colder. He noticed it more now, the way the wind stung a little sharper, the way people hurried with their heads down, trying to get somewhere warm. But he also noticed other things he used to miss. Like the older man who sat outside the laundromat every morning with nothing but a jacket and a distant stare. Or the young woman with a stroller, counting coins at the bus stop. He didn't walk past them anymore. There was something different in the way he saw the world now. Every face, every person, carried a story. Some kept it hidden. Others wore it in their eyes. And maybe he couldn't fix everything. Maybe he couldn't save anyone. But he could see them. And sometimes, That alone made a difference. At work, he started checking in on coworkers more. Not just a passing, "You good?" but really asking, listening. And at home, he hugged his son longer, talked more, put down his phone when it didn't matter, and looked him in the eye when it did. He never saw Sarah and her kids again. Not in person, anyway. But they stayed with him. In small ways. In quiet reminders. Like when his son said, "You're different, Dad. I like it." He thought about that sidewalk often. That day when he had nothing to give but gave anyway. It didn't make his life easier. It didn't erase the pressure. But it shifted something. He stopped waiting for his life to get better before helping others. He understood now. Sometimes you find healing by being there for someone else. Even when you're still hurting. Even when you're barely holding on. And somehow, in giving what little you have, you end up with more than you ever expected.